Good morning to all. Well, good afternoon then. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I thank Uja Prabodhan to invite me on this event for the discussion and the presentation on the all-important issue of energy. And my subject has been coal in the context of power sector, and I will also briefly touch upon the oil and gas. Since the morning, we have been hearing that electricity sector is bogged down by many issues. And all we know that the electricity is very vital for our economic growth and development and well-being and ensuring our living standards and safety, energy security. That is sufficient for the industrial production and in general for our domestic and commercial needs. Post-1991, the great financial resource crunch started to show up, and the mode of setting up the power plant and the transmission line got very much restricted because of non-availability of the budgetary support in those days. And the idea came up to have a limited opening of the electricity sector, and that is how the initial phase of IPPs came over there, like Jindal Power from the days of 1995, 96 and all. By the time we were closing towards the millennium, last millennium, a severe dues of the state electricity board, state discoms, started affecting the growth of power sector, and very massive dues occurred. And it was realized that unless something great is being done, nothing can move, or situation seems to be almost at standstill for a few years before a detailed study and final recommendation of the reforms came up, and restructuring of the state electricity boards, unbundling of power utilities, and the reforms. And with that, the Electricity Act 2003 came up, and state electricity boards were divided into the distribution, transmission, and generation utilities separately. And a mechanism was worked out to address the massive dues which was owed to the generating company by these discoms. And a mechanism was also worked out during those days that the future dues do not accumulate. And at least for the central sector, utilities like NTPC, etc., the dues was paid from the budgetary support, budgetary outlay of the state governments, and the mechanism worked very fine for another, say, around 10 years. The growth of electricity production, that also has not been very smooth or in a straight line manner. Initially from 85 to 95, the generation almost doubled, or rather more than doubled, from 180 billion units to almost to 400 billion units. And, sorry. Yeah. And after 1995 to 2005, the growth in electricity production was not to that extent, and the rise in 10 years was hardly 60%, and we reached less than 550 billion units by 2005. Today, as of March 2015, the installed capacities have been coal 1,64,000 megawatt, natural gas 23,000 megawatt, hydro 41,000 megawatt, oil 1,200 megawatt, renewable energy, which includes the solar, biomass, and wind, and mini and micro hydro, that is 31,600 megawatt, of which the central sector capacities have been 75,000 megawatt, 27%, and state sector capacities have been 96,000 or 97,000 megawatt, 36%, and private sector, it came up very massively after the opening of the power sector with the Electricity Act 2003, and massive capacities were set up. And private sector capacity today is 98,000 megawatt, that is 36%. At this capacity, in the today's scenario, is the major representative stressed asset, stalled capacity, merchant power which is not selling, the coal linkages which is not happening, and this is of many, many issues relating to this aspect, including the paying capacity of the state governments, state discoms, very high AT&C loss, very poor control of AT&C loss. I will say very poor control, despite the claims made by the regulatory commissions and the state governments that the lot of happening in terms of the reforms and controlling the losses. I'm sorry to say that the progress is moving at a snail's pace. And this is the one single big block of issue. That is the state discoms, financial stress, mismanagement, and very poor control. This block is affecting the entire electricity sector, endangering its growth. Not only to that, it's rather endangered risks, financial, operational, and security risks. They are all going up to the banks, financial institutions, and to our economy. Just in the morning, as Dr. Pramod Dev was saying, that the state discoms and the regulatory mechanism, the regulatory commissions, it is the necessity of the day, and yet it is so much politically bogged down that something drastic like the surgical operations needs to be done. Till 2007 and around, we had been aware that there is some coal shortages, and Coal India, or the state coal producing company, is little short of the and as of 2007 around, the shortage of coal was thought to be, rather it was 2008-9, shortage of coal was thought to be during those days around 12%, and coal imports started to pick up massively during those days. And those days were also coinciding with the rise in the global coal prices, with the massive rise in the China demand. And it also coincided with the lot of merchant capacities commissioned without the FSAs, without the fuel supply agreement. And then happened the coal scam came to light. And as we all know that the operational, non-operational, just greenfield coal mines block allocated to the private, government and state sector, they all got cancelled. And a new mechanism got worked out under the guidelines of the Supreme Court. And the coal auction happened. So this coal shortages, massive coal shortages, non-availability of coal, it came up suddenly post-2008 in a very massive scale, so that the entire power sector became almost shaken. To add to this problem, there has been, I will just come down to the coal sector. These are details of the state-wise this power, power capacities. And this dilemma of electricity sector that is affecting the today's power sector and coming up with the new production capacities. And this coal has proven to be the biggest challenger for the electricity sector, along with the financial health of the state discoms. Today, the coal production for this year, 2015-16, it is expected to be 560 million tons. This is the scaled down target, rather, from the 2011. Somehow, when the additional capacities were being added by the private sector, the matching actions were not taking place in the coal sector, which was a monopoly of the state sector, rather, I mean the government sector. And the targets were, to that extent, that they were, in the 2011, the targets were lowered down 2 times. And although this, the past, accumulated lesser growth, not matching with the electricity growth, that had already taken its toll, and this 2011 onwards, the coal production, which was targeted in 2011 earlier for 660 million ton, it was lowered down to 550 million ton, and that too was not achieved. The reasons for this cannot be very well said, except that inside the coal companies, the setting up the resources, additional resources to manage the production, to manage the additional equipments, manpower, and the mine plan. So much so that although the coal mining was getting affected by the environmental concerns and long delays in the clearances, somehow the poor management in this aspect, the entire thing, that is the survey of the mining resources, the assessment of the reserves, the short survey and the detailed survey, which is being done basically by the Geological Survey of India and the CMPDI. This also got extremely failing the targets whatever were set for them. Somehow today most of the people, they think that the coal mining scam and the inability of the mine owners not to operate because of these Supreme Court aspects and all those things. But at the same time, there was poor control and management in the entire coal producing chain. To the extent that yearly and quarterly targets from the survey of the mining area, assessment of the resources, putting up the additional resources, and coordination with the state governments and the coal companies, which were very much wanted, and it all reflected into that aspect which I was talking about, that is the reduction of the coal target in 2011. because suddenly the people realized that the coal capacities has, power capacities has so much concentrated way it has come up that the coal production, they cannot, with those days of management aspect, they cannot cope up with the production targets. Now, very little has been done in the coal washing side, as well as the advanced technique of coal gasification and coal liquefaction processes, which can make the alternatives available to the natural gas and all those kind of things. Because we know that the 23,000 megawatt capacity of gas plants on all India basis, that is operating almost just 25%. PLF I'm talking about. Even NTPC plants, gas plants, they have managed only up to 40% PLF. The problem of coal availability, although there has been shortfall, slippages on the coal companies' production side, availability side, the connectivity side, the rail connectivity and the availability of wagons in the past few years that had been affecting the coal availability. Of late, just in this quarter, the June quarter and all, and by the end of the financial year 2014-15, the electricity offtake by the DISCOMs have come down. As was already being discussed in the morning, that state DISCOMs, although financially so much stressed, had been earlier getting the money from the financial institutions. But when they did not get, they had not been getting that much enough money, they stopped off-taking the power to the extent that was required, and rather they chose to adopt the greater load sheddings and cutting of the load and just managing with the lower availability of electricity, rather than paying the higher fuel cost. This is the geographical distribution of the coal reserve. India has got total 293 billion tons of coal reserve. And with the operating mines, it is presently 65 billion tons of reserves are under operation. And with the present day operations, with the 650 million tons of coal or production level, which is being talked about, that by 2017, it can reach to 1 billion ton. Then also the coal can last well over 100 years. Now, as per the previous recent two auctions, the two kinds of auction process were adopted. One for the companies with the PPAs, and the other for the companies which do not have the PPAs. And these are the details about the auction. And it is very uncertain that this auction process, where very aggressive bidding took place, so much so that the negative bidding and where the mine cost also may become difficult to recover. whether it will succeed to that extent or not. And my fear is that not only this, the blocks which have been offered, it might be of those blocks where the coal mapping has not been done by the Geological Survey of India to the extent, the detailed survey which I was talking about. So the reserves and the quantified estimation might not be exactly available for these even auction blocks. So very urgent action to augment this process. That is the estimation of the coal reserves. The very other day, I was hearing to the interview of Coal Secretary that the data on the mining of this reserves data and the estimated coal, etc., for these mines which were auctioned were not made available to the public, and it is available on cost to the people who can pay. And it was said that why it should be made public when it is a resource and it is available resource. Whereas this is the asset which should have been made public beforehand when the auction was started, and the people could have taken very informed decision. And this kind of aggressive bidding might not have happened. Because with the limited window of auctioning, and when everybody is clamoring to get their share of coal, the people are adopting the aggressive bidding. And later on, they will discover, even this condition has been put that within 5 years, the mine will become operational, whereas the 5 years is too short a period for the mine to start producing production. And the benchmark cost, during the auction, the ceiling has been put by the benchmark cost of the Coal India. Now, you see that the Coal India, which has got all kinds of expertise with them, all kinds of resources and experiences with them, and they can manage to come out with a particular price level. And new entrant is expected to quote lower, and out of reverse bidding mode, they have still to quote much lower. Then how can it be expected that the Coal India, which is having so much resources and coming out with a particular price level, and the bidder will rightly put this price level? Ultimately, this is going to reflect in the operation of the Coal India. Those coal mining and the ultimate price of coal which is going to come out and which is going to be paid by the consumers and down the stream this thing. Same thing is happening with the coal washeries also. The Coal India or the government sector coal companies have hardly made much of effort in the setting of the coal washeries. Till recently, just a few years back, 3-4 years back, the coal washery capacity was hardly 25 million ton. 30 million or 35 million ton. But it was the private sector which made massive investment, and today it is a little respectable washery capacity, that is 144 million ton out of the total production of 560 million ton, which is going to be this year. And all we know that washery or the reducing of the non-combustible material at the mine end is much advantageous and much prone to wasteful expenditure on the transportation and all. That is the transportation of ash, and then the subsequent management of the fly ash by the power station and attendant deteriorating effect. So there should be very, very aggressive focus on the coal washery and putting up the different kind of financial model to do investments in the coal mining, rather coal washery. So, gentlemen, this coal is a very, very touchy issue, and where the continuous dynamic thinking process, where the coal cannot be isolated, as from the tone of the coal companies, what we see that they are very much concerned that what is happening by the Supreme Court guidelines and all. And somehow the profitability and extraction of the maximum value from the coal that has become the motto. I'm afraid that that should not work. And the electricity sector, hand in hand with the coal, in working out these models and working out the pricing mechanism and assessing that what will happen, the down the line pricing and down the line effect on the economic situation, that also to be taken into account in this coal mining strategies. And with that, I believe the time is short, and I will end my lecture. And any questions I would invite. Yeah, correct. Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.